Good morning. My name is Melissa Johnson. I'm a research biologist with the USDA ARS PBARC in Hilo, Hawaii. Today, I'm going to be talking about CLR on Hawaii Island, trends across elevations and management types, with some insights on cultural and chemical controls. Today's presentation is in collaboration with Luis Aristizabal. Luis is a coffee grower here on Hawaii Island and works as an independent consultant. Luis has worked with SHAC and PBARC on many coffee-related projects over the years. I'm going to begin my talk today with a discussion of CLR incidence trends on Hawaii Island. We've been collecting data from about 30 farms over the last 2 years, and we're starting to see some trends in terms of CLR incidence over time. What we've seen is that from the months of April through July, we have a low period of incidence, which then increases as we get into the harvest from August through December. Incidence then begins to decrease as we get into the early coffee season, January through March, and again falls again in April. When we look at farms across different elevations, low, mid, and high, so far, we have not seen any significant difference among these different elevations. So coffee leaf rust appears to affect all farms equally on Hawaii Island. If we look at farms in the different districts of Kona, Kau, and Hilo, we also see similar trends in terms of CLR incidence. There's an initial lag time with CLR being quite low when it's first detected. And again, it begins to increase as you get into the harvest and then falls again as you get into the beginning of the year. So similar patterns across elevations and across districts so far over the last couple of years. We've also been tracking CLR Wind Dispersal. So we have passive and active samplers set up across Hawaii Island, and we have detected CLR blowing in the wind in our samplers year-round. However, we have gotten fewer detections from May to August and a peak number of detections from September to April. And this appears to follow the patterns of CLR incidence that I mentioned in the previous slide. We've also been looking at CLR life stages in the field. So from 15 farms in 2022, we documented the 3 life stages of coffee leaf rust, which include latent or new infections. Those are the very pale yellow spots that you see in the bottom left picture. Uretispores, which are the dispersal stage. These are the bright orange, yellow, powdery looking lesions that you see on the right corner picture. And then lastly, the necrotic lesions. This is when the tissue actually dies from CLR, and that's what you see on the bottom right-hand photo as well. So for the latent new infections, we're seeing 3 peaks in this life stage. This life stage is seeming to occur early in the year, around February, March. We see a new cycle of new infection from July to August, and then we see a 3rd peak in new infection in November. So what's interesting is that these 3 peaks appear to be separated by about 90 days. And this coincides with research in Dr. Lisa Keith's lab, which showed also from a Hawaii Island farm that life stages of CLR appear to be in 90-day cycles. So this follows again with what Lisa has reported from her field research. For the uretispore dispersal stage, we are seeing these year-round, but there seems to be a peak from May through December. And then for tissue necrosis, we again are seeing tissue death year-round, but there seems to be a peak early in the season, March to April. And this is likely the result of a high level of infection at the end of the harvest season in the previous year. We've also been looking at CLR germination in the field. Before I get into those results, I want you to take a look at the weather data on the rest of the slide here. These are 3-year averages from Hawaii Island. This is important when we talk about germination because CLR germination has 2 major requirements. The first is that water must be present on the leaves. And the second is that the temperatures must be warm. CLR can germinate anywhere from 15 to 30 degrees C. but it prefers 22 to 24 degrees C, which is in the red, highlighted in the red on the top right. So that's the optimum range for CLR germination. Now, if we look at germination for Hawaii Island, we see that it's fairly low, March and April, begins to increase in May. Then we see a peak from about July to October for all three elevation groups. And then again falling October through November and December. This largely seems to follow the pattern of temperature on Hawaii Island, which increases into the harvest season. And it also follows an increase in relative humidity during those months, as well as higher levels of rainfall. If we look at germination across districts in the Kau and Hilo districts, as well as the Kona district, we again see a pattern of germination that seems to follow these optimum temperatures, which occur later in the year, as well as periods of higher relative humidity and higher levels of rainfall. We've also documented pruning style and CLR incidence to try to see if there are any correlations between these two. What we found, which is pretty interesting, is that the Kona style of pruning seems to have significantly higher CLR incidence relative to block stumping, Beaumont Fukunaga, and umbrella or hedging style of pruning. This is just the first year of data collection for pruning style, so this may change, but as a first year indicator, the results seem to be pretty compelling. You can see pictures on the right-hand side of what a typical farm with these different styles of pruning might look like. Again, the bottom picture with Kona style definitely seems to be more affected by CLR. We think this might have to do with lower airflow and also lower solar radiation getting onto the leaves in the Kona style of pruning. If you think about Kona style of pruning, usually the trees are quite tall. And they have a lot of verticals, like you can see in the picture here. This inhibits airflow between the branches, and it also creates a lot of self-shading. It's a microclimate that CLR really loves and thrives in. This is in comparison to some of the other styles of pruning, like block stumping and Beaumont Fukunaga. You're essentially taking out the entire CLR reservoir on those trees when you stump them. With the umbrella or topping method, you are decreasing the height of the trees. So that will make it easier for you to get good spray coverage. So again, the Kona style, the trees are quite tall, usually very dense with a lot of laterals and verticals. And that can make it very difficult to get in there and spray and get good coverage. And it also decreases airflow and solar radiation and creates a climate that CLR thrives in. We've also looked at management types and CLR incidence and have found, not surprisingly, that organic farms have significantly higher CLR incidence by the end of the season compared to conventional farms. We believe that the reason for this is that organic farms do not have the availability of translaminar fungicides and different fertilizers that the conventional farms have. So this is putting them at a major disadvantage for controlling CLR. We've also been documenting coffee plant nutrition and soil health. So we've done soil and plant tissue samplings from 21 farms on the Big Island. We found that all 21 farms have at least several deficiencies. Some of the more common ones are potassium, calcium, manganese, and zinc. In terms of soil pH, which is very important for nutrient availability for the plants, we have found that around 30 to 40% of the farms that we sampled had soils that were too acidic, so less than 5.5 pH. About 50% of farms were in the optimal range for coffee at about 5.5 to 6.5, and around 10% of farms had a little higher than optimal pH, above 6.5. We've also conducted CLR fungicide trials in 2022 at 3 farms. So we've looked at 4 different products. Problad Verde is a botanical-based fungicide. It's considered a translaminar. Coside and Badge are both copper-based fungicides, which are preventatives or contact fungicides. And Serenade is a bacteria-based fungicide, also considered a preventative or contact fungicide. So at each of the 3 farms, we conducted 2 applications of each product, each 5 weeks apart, and we used the medium dosage rate according to the label. Results for Farm 1 in Kona. Starting infection was quite low, less than 2% in all plots. We found no difference between treatments for the first 10 weeks. From weeks 18 to 24, Badge, which is one of the copper products, provided significantly better control than the other 3 products. We also found that leaf retention was highest in Badge and Kau plots. At Farm 2 in South Kona, our initial starting infection was around 5% in all plots. We found no difference between treatments for the first 5 weeks. From weeks 10 to 21, both copper products provided significantly better control compared to the Serenade and the ProBlad. And we also found that leaf retention was significantly higher in the Badge and Serenade plots. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go over the 3rd farm, but I will present a summary here of the 3 farms, which is an average. Starting at a low incidence, less than 5%, all products provided good protection for the first 4 weeks. The action threshold was reached at week 5 for ProBlad and Serenade. At this time, we conducted the 2nd spray, and the incidence decreased for a couple of weeks and then started to go up again, with the threshold again being reached at weeks 3 and 4 for ProBlad and Serenade. Kau provided about 5 weeks protection from the 2nd spray, and only Badge provided 10 weeks of protection. We think that this might have to do with the fact that Badge actually has 2 active ingredients. It has copper oxychloride and copper hydroxide. And this is in contrast to all other 3 products, which only have 1 active ingredient. We've also looked at different fungicide spray strategies from the 30 farms that we've been monitoring over the last year. 8 of the farms only applied preventatives, 9 farms applied preventatives plus ProBlad, and 13 farms applied a preventative plus Preaxor. The difference is more than 12 times between farms that applied Preaxor and a preventative compared to the other 2 spray strategies. So Preaxor plus a preventative resulted in an average CLR incidence of about 3% compared to the other 2 strategies, which ended the year at 36 and 43% incidence. I also wanted to mention that some of the topics that I discussed today are in our publication, which came out last year on coffee leaf rust on Hawaii Island. So you can see that article for more information. In particular, we have an economic analysis for fungicide sprays where we talk about the costs and benefits of using different fungicide sprays, different numbers of sprays, and spray methods, including backpack and tractor sprayers. And then I want to end my talk today just talking about some of the management strategies for coffee leaf rust. I think you've probably heard from a number of researchers and also from Andrea that there is no silver bullet for controlling CLR. You really need to use a combination of methods for successful control year-round. This includes cultural controls like pruning and weed management, improving your plant and soil health with fertilizers, and including chemical controls, both preventatives and translaminars. The first thing that you can focus on for a management strategy is to optimize your pruning. If you're using the Kona style, you would try to aim for only 3 to 4 verticals. This way you're getting good spray coverage. You hopefully don't have very tall trees. You want to minimize the height of your trees too. And you want to start looking maybe at some alternatives outside of the Kona style. This includes topping, block stumping, as well as Beaumont Fukunaga. Next, you want to think about controlling your weeds and desuckering often. The weeds will compete with your trees for nutrients, and the suckers are a magnet for CLR. We often see very high levels of infection on these suckers, so it's important to remove them often. Next, you want to do your soil and leaf tissue tests, which should be done annually, and you want to compare these to optimal values for coffee. so that you can detect and correct deficiencies. Your fertilizer regime should be amended based on these soil and tissue analyses. We recommend to apply smaller doses of fertilizer every couple of months instead of applying 2 or 3 very large applications of fertilizer. This allows the trees to properly take up the nutrients. Next, you want to think about monitoring your trees for CLR and applying fungicides if detected. It's very important that you optimize your pruning, weeding, and fertilizing before you start thinking about applying fungicides. We see many farms that are applying fungicides before the trees are properly pruned and the trees do not have good plant health. And there are a lot of overgrown weeds. And at these farms, the fungicides are not effective. You have to have good farm sanitation before you can start thinking about chemical controls. Also, with chemical controls, you need to continuously monitor for CLR throughout the year. This is going to help you detect hotspots and also see if your fungicide applications are effective. This should be visible by looking at the lesions on the underside of the tree, and they should look dried up if your fungicides were effective. With that, I'd like to thank you all for your attention. I'd also like to thank all the coffee growers that have continuously supported our research, the PBARC Coffee Ohana, all of the technicians and scientists that have contributed to this work, Andrea Kawabata at the UHC TAR Extension Service, Suzanne Schreiner at SHAC, and Melanie Bondera at HDOA. Please feel free to contact myself or Luis with any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.